Hey, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I want to thank you for tuning in. So since the last time you've seen this bike, I did get Steve at Old Iron Customs to put a new seat cover on. Seat covers from Pit Replica on eBay. He's out of Thailand. Makes some of the best seat covers around. And ships them cheap too. Today I'm going to be reassembling this bottom end. I don't like having stuff apart on my bench. My buddy Mike at Mike's Bikes installed a new connecting rod and connecting rod bearing. I've installed new crank bearings. There was nothing wrong with the transmission bearings, so I just cleaned everything up. The cases have been painted, both case halves. So I'm going to be assembling this. I've put some two-stroke oil on the bearing and on the seal. I've got new seals. All the seals are new. So that's what we're going to be doing today, is putting this bottom end together. So the big thing I want to stress, this is not a how-to video. You should never rely on videos on the internet to get you through this kind of stuff. Download a manual. I got a PDF manual for free off the internet, IT 175 kind of fan page. You know, I've got experience with this, but you know, the big thing is have a manual, follow it. If you get into trouble, videos like this will help you kind of visualize what's going on. So anyway, I'm going to start with a bit of oil where these are going to go on the bearings. This could require 3 hands. I'll have to at some point put the shift fork in. And the shift forks can only go in one way, so you don't really need to worry too much. But I think this shift fork has to go in before I drop that down in the case. I'm going to oil the shaft. The shift forks fit into these slots that actually move those gears to shift. There's a lot of science behind it, I'm sure. Okay, that one's in. Everything's still spinning nice. And then the other shift fork. Okay, those are in. Everything's spinning nice. Now I'm going to put the crank in. I've already oiled the bearing here with 2-stroke oil. I'm just going to put a bit more on the shaft. Beautiful. Okay, so I've oiled this bearing with 2-stroke oil, these other bearings with just regular engine oil. I'll make sure your dowels are still in the one case half. I've elected to go with stainless steel screws to hold this together, and I've put never seize on the ends because sometimes stainless can gall threads, so that's probably a good idea to do. I've cleaned the gasket surfaces with a little bit of brake clean on a rag. You just want to make sure there's no oil residue. And I'm going to be using this RTV Ultra Black gasket maker. This engine doesn't use a gasket between the 2 case halves, so you just want to apply it very thinly. You don't need a whole bunch on there, otherwise it's going to goop inside when you tighten the case halves together. So you want a nice even film all the way around, just to take up the minor imperfections or nicks people have put in it. This case had never been apart, so it's not all beat up. Some guys don't buy the proper tools and they try to split the cases with the pry bars and screwdrivers and end up really making a mess. But I guess I was guilty of that as a teenager when I couldn't afford the proper tools. So anyway, once I get all this spread, we'll come back and assemble this bottom end. Okay, this particular engine doesn't have washers on the ends of some of these shafts, and some of the Hondas I've done, you always got to watch this. You got all the right washers everywhere. Alright, I think I'm ready to go back together here. Everything still spins, so it's just that crank going into that crank bearing. Okay, I'm going to use the screws themselves to help suck this case together. It's just the crank is not cooperating. And as you tighten, you should continue to spin things. Make sure everything's happy. So I'll go ahead and finish tightening all these screws down. Okay, when I first had everything tightened, the crank wouldn't move very well. So because I was forcing the one side on, I jammed the crank against the case. I tapped it a few times and it freed up nice. So I'm confident everything's good there, everything's spinning. What I used for paint is this Duplicolor gloss black engine enamel. It has a ceramic in it. I like it because it holds its shine really well. I know this engine originally was probably semi-gloss black, but I just find like this rattle can paint will turn semi-gloss eventually. So now I got everything together. There's one thing I should point out. There's an O-ring goes on the crank. I'm using the old one because the place I got my parts from screwed up. So that's got to go on first. And then there's a key. And then I'm going to put some oil, because this rides in where the seal is. This side of the engine, it's a double lip seal. It's the first one I've kind of seen where it's got a seal from both sides. And then they have a lock washer and nut. Manual said that was, I think, 58 foot-pounds, so I'm going to go and just double check the torque with my torque wrench, and then we'll go ahead and put all this other stuff on. A little stiffer than I'm used to, but there's a double lip seal here and on this side, and new bearings, new seals, so I think that'll be fine. We'll go ahead and put the clutch together. Okay, when I slid the gear stack in, this clip has to come off when you take it apart, so I've put the clip on. Then there's a washer. And the gear. then another washer, and then this split clip. A lot easier to get on than it was to take off. You always want to make sure that the clip is all the way down in that groove. And basically what that does, what that is for, is when you engage the kickstart, it comes out and spins that gear, which in turn spins the clutch, which in turn spins the crank. Okay, I've installed the shift shaft back in, and I'm just going to verify that everything works. So there, two gears are locked together. Shift up. Two gears locked together. Half shift down. Arm in neutral. So I confirmed all that works. Pretty sure this has to go in before the clutch, so it's in. On the clutch itself, I did file the edges of the basket here. It'll just make the pull a little smoother. Gonna check it over, make sure you're not missing any teeth, that it's still solid. So if you're ever in doubt, just print off the page of the manual. That's where that little ball bearing went that I found in the last video. I'll show you that as it goes together. So there's a washer first. We're going to oil that shaft. Then there's a bushing. Then the clutch basket. And there's another washer. And then there's the center hub. Everything's still spinning nice. We can go ahead and put this together. So after you get that nut tight, you gotta fold this washer over. Fold that washer down, and that will stop the nut from backing off. So that little ball bearing goes between the two shafts. There's another shaft here. And you can see a mark on each one where that little ball bearing was. I'll put a little oil on the shaft. And then in the manual it says to put grease on the ball bearing. Assume so that sticks in there and doesn't fall out on you. Just going to push that in a bit so it doesn't fall out. Then we'll go ahead and assemble the clutch plates. I just like to put a little bit of oil on them. If you've got new clutch plates, you have to soak them in oil for a while. Now on these metal discs, you'll feel a sharp edge on one side and a smooth edge. It's just the way it was stamped. I don't know if it really matters, but I always put it together, the smooth edge in, so they're all the same. And then lastly, we're going to put the, whatever they call this. There is an adjustment here we'll get into later. Just using a pry bar between the two gear teeth here to hold it while I tighten it. You don't have to get crazy on the torque. In fact, I think the manual is saying 7.2 foot-pounds, so not much. You just want to go on a crisscross pattern. Then when they're all tight, go around once more just to make sure. Now this adjustment here, I don't know if you can see, there's a pointer here and a pointer on the case. You're supposed to adjust that until those two line up. That's the wrong way. Okay, that's tight. And these two pointers are now lined up. It does seem a little bit strange though, because this is loose, but as soon as you put some pressure on it, it tightens all up. So that's how it's supposed to work. You want a little bit of free play on your clutch lever, but anyways, this is all back together. We can go ahead and put the outer cover on now. Okay, I'm going to put a little oil on the shaft where the seal goes. And like on the center case, I've elected to go with new stainless, and I've also put some Never Sees on. When I took the bike apart, there was two missing. They use a Phillips head screw here, and I'm not a big fan of those Phillips head screws because they get stripped, and mainly because people use the wrong screwdriver on them. So this isn't exactly 100% correct restoration, but it's something that can be changed fairly easily if you wanted to go buy the original screws at $5 a piece probably. Well, that is looking pretty nice. One last time, I'm going to make sure the gear shifts correctly. First gear, neutral, second gear. So we know that's all together nice, everything's spinning nice. We can go on to the other side with the flywheel. Okay, make sure you don't forget that little key. The original grommet on this harness was wrecked. I was lucky to find a grommet off another harness. I had to put a split in it to get it together, but it will work a lot better than that rotten one that was on there. Before you tighten this down, you can see there's two little hash marks right next to that screw. You gotta make sure those are lined up before you tighten everything down. Here we have our new flywheel. The old one was damaged here. I was lucky enough to find a new one. I'm gonna slide it on. Make sure the key's close. And there's a flat washer, lock washer, and the nut. I do have a new nut coming, it just hasn't arrived yet. Again, these aren't the correct screws. These are the newer style Japanese bolt, but they're far superior to those kind of horrible Phillips headed screws that strip out. So Mike at Mike's Bikes also bored this cylinder for me. It's now painted. We went with a 1mm over piston. I'm not going to install it yet because I think it'll be easier to get the engine back in the bike without that cylinder and head on. I did go for new reeds. I bought a Boyce & Reed kit. And then this is from Hotfoot Moto. This is going to replace that cracked car boot, which is likely the reason this bike seized in the first place. Looks to me like you don't need that gasket that is going to seal here. So I'm going to put a bit of silicone on, because there's no way that gasket will fit there. No, that's not right. That gasket was for the inside here. But there's a little divot here, so I'm going to fill that with silicone. Doesn't look like it quite molded right. So I'm just going to loosely assemble this without the piston for storage for when I need it down the road. The rest of the bike gets back together. So yeah, that looks nice. One built bottom end. So if you made it to the end of the video, you get a gold star. This is not the most exciting material in the world. I don't know how I could make it exciting. It's a lot of details, but it turned out really nice. Hopefully this helps you with your IT 175 rebuild at some point. If I get 5 views on this video, I'll be shocked, but what are you gonna do? I'm here doing it anyways, might as well show you what I know. Anyway, I wanted to say thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.